complicated situation concerning Kirtananda in the early days of the movement. Prabhupada took him to India. I thought he gave him sannyas when he came back, but in any event, when he gave him sannyas, that was to keep him separate from the other devotees so that he would not be able to confuse them. But instead, he was busy preaching nonsense that he was making up. And he thought because he took sannyas, now he can say anything he pleases. And this is so early in the movement, what year, 66?
Yes, this is very early. 10,
67,
17,
October 67.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a year before I was initiated.
Right.
But, yeah, so then he went through that. Now, 67. In 68, I went to New Vrindavan and met with him and Hayagriva and some other devotees that had a building there. And they had initially started out to create a movement against Srila Prabhupada. But then they gradually became, again, disciples of Prabhupada. And when I went there in December of almost exactly 1 year later, in December of 68, that was 67, right? In 68, I went there, and they were very strange, but they were practicing 100% Krishna consciousness. There was no nonsense or maya going on whatsoever.
Right. Okay.
And then I came back in 1969, in spring of 69, a few months later, and that's when Hayagriva finally relinquished the Bhagavad Gita as it is that he had stolen from Prabhupada, and he and Kirtananda had tried to publish it under their own names. So for Vinayak's purpose, we should understand this is information that's been given to try to keep our society together and whole and healthy while discussing a person that went way out on a branch. But later on, look at that. A few months later, he's back in the slot of Krishna consciousness, and I was able to see that with my own eyes. I was there. So this is how miraculous Prabhupada is, that he could bring everything back together from total hell and chaos. Because he came back from India telling all the devotees they shouldn't wear sikas, they shouldn't wear neckbands, shouldn't wear robes, and they should do this, that. And that became very scandalous for the devotees. They wanted to find out from Prabhupada, is this true? And Prabhupada said no, and he put Kirtananda on very strict leave, which is reflected in this letter here, and explained to Pradyumna. Now you might say, why Pradyumna? Because Pradyumna was a scholar. He's the scholar of ISKCON. And so if he understood the clear truth, which Prabhupada put in that letter, then he would be able to, Pradyumna would be able to talk to other devotees and keep them from being tempted to go crazy like Kirtananda. Okay, is that okay? There's more to it than that.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably all there needs to be said about that particular situation. Is that true?
Yes, Prabhu, it's okay from my side. Thank you for the explanation.
Vinayak. Yeah, now Vinayak, this has nothing to do with you. This is taking a crazy situation that could have begun with we only had a handful of devotees in the movement, maybe 40 or 50 devotees in the whole movement, if that. So Prabhupada needed to come in and save the situation. So it has nothing to do with you, Vinayak Prabhu. You're a saint by comparison to Kirtananda, I assure you.
Absolutely. That time, like you were saying that Pradyumna Prabhu being a scholar, like that time also in 67, he knew Sanskrit and reading Bengali literatures and everything.
Who is that?
Pradyumna Prabhu.
Oh yeah, Pradyumna. Pradyumna was a very great scholar, and he had connections with Harvard.
So before coming to
he
Krishna,
was trying to help Prabhupada create the editing of his books so that it would be accepted by academia. meaning the educated class of people in Harvard, and Harvard was the leader of Sanskrit studies. So Pradyumna wanted Prabhupada's books to be the leading books of Harvard studies. So he worked closely with Prabhupada to make that occur.
So Pradyumna Prabhu was knowing Sanskrit before coming to Krishna consciousness.
I'm sorry, before he became a devotee? I'm not sure. I really don't know. You're asking if he was studying Sanskrit before he came to Krishna consciousness?
Yeah, because it was 1967 and it's very difficult to grasp Sanskrit within just 3 years of the movement.
You'd be amazed at what people were able to do back then. It may be, I don't know. He might have had study in Sanskrit. He certainly had study in different types of philosophy. I never got to know Pradyumna extremely well. But he was very close to Srila Prabhupada. At the beginning of every class, the Prabhupada would give, Pradyumna would be there, and Pradyumna would begin the whole process of giving the class with Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. If you hear that in front of a class, that's Pradyumna saying it.
Yeah, Pradyumna and Nitai Prabhu, mostly.
Well, mostly Pradyumna.
Yeah.
You say Nitai?
Yeah, sometimes he also.
But Nitai ended up leaving the movement because he disagreed with the way that Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta took initiation from Gaura Krishna Das Babaji.
Okay, we have some new devotees joining us. His name is Aryan and Krishna